I could have everybody's attention, please. Sorry, we're new mics. If I could have everyone's attention. So greetings, voters of Fairfield, guests. Before we begin, I want to make sure that all non-residents are sitting in the rear. And if you are a resident and you would like to vote, you need to sit in the voting section after you've checked in with our voter registrar. If you would like to make a comment on one of the articles we are taking up, you're going to raise your hand and you're going to stand up so the moderator can call on you to speak. Because this meeting is broadcast on the town's Crossroads-TV cable television station, you'll be asked to speak into the microphone over here to the side of the stage. When you're addressing the moderator, who we will be soon electing, you're going to state your name, your street address, or your organization if applicable. At this time, if you could please place your phones on silent and turn off any cell phones that are near microphones, and that will reduce the interference. For those that can, if you would all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if you would remain standing, for those of you that can, and remove any hats, as Nathaniel Batson will now perform the national anthem. You'll have to excuse me, I'm always misty-eyed every time. Before the business portion of our meeting commences, I would like to bring to your attention that the budget meetings are held in January, February, and March. They're open to the public. And that preceding annual town budget meeting tonight, there's always a public hearing now on the draft warrant. It's an opportunity for the public to speak and ask in-depth questions regarding the budget process, and that was held on April 10th, 2019. And there were only 4 attendees who spoke. We'd love to have more of you join us next year. You're all invited. At this time, we're going to have presentations of recognition. And I would like to introduce Fairfield Town Council Chairman Rowden, Senator Scott Searway, and Representative Shelley Rudnicki.
Good evening. I'm Council Chairman Aaron Rowden, and I'm going to start by presenting our, is this on? Can you hear me? Yep. Excellent. I'm going to begin by presenting our town report dedication. This year's town report is dedicated to Douglas Paul Matthew. On page 2 of your report, you can read about his accomplishments and his contributions to the town of Fairfield. But I want to highlight his participation in the PAL program and his volunteering, and I believe that his wife Alva will be receiving the dedication in his stead. Would you come forward? On behalf of the Town Council, thank you.
Thank you.
We do have legislative documents for each recipient. Come on, Hank.
So we do have a little recognition for Douglas Matthew. So from the state of Maine, be it known to all that we, the members of the Senate and the House of Representatives, join in recognizing the late Douglas P. Matthew of Fairfield, to whom, for contributions to the community, the town of Fairfield has dedicated its town report, and be it ordered that this official expression of sentiment be sent forthwith on behalf of the 129th Legislature and the people of the state of Maine. Signed, Troy Jackson, President of the Senate; Derek Grant, Secretary of the Senate; Sarah Gideon, Speaker of the House; and Robert Hunt, Clerk of the House, along with myself and Representative Verdicki of Fairfield. Congratulations.
The next award I would like to present is the annual Spirit of America Award. This year's recipient is Kimberly Lindloff. A copy of this certificate is printed in page 3 of the town report. I would certainly invite you to read it, but Ms. Lindloff has been a long-standing servant of our community, and we want to honor her tonight for all of her contributions. Would you like to come forward? Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Aaron. You got something?
I have to say, Kimberly has been a great leader in the community and in Kennebec County, in Somerset County for the Chamber of Commerce, and done such a great job. I tell you that I don't know anybody better. She's done a great job and really helped the communities out and helping businesses and spreading the word of how important it is and trying to keep us going. So on behalf of the state of Maine, be it known to all that we, the members of the Senate and the House of Representatives, join in recognizing Kimberly Lindloff of Fairfield, recipient of Spirit of America Foundation Award. The Spirit of America Foundation was established to encourage and promote volunteerism, and the foundation presents awards to honor local individuals, organizations, or projects in appreciation of community service. We extend our congratulations and best wishes, and be it ordered that this official expression of sentiment be sent forthwith on behalf of the 129th Legislature and the people of the state of Maine. Signed, Troy Jackson, President of the Senate; Derek Grant, Secretary of the Senate; Sarah Gideon, Speaker of the House; Robert Hunt, Clerk of the House; and myself and Representative Verdicki of Fairfield.
The final award I'll be presenting tonight is a unique New England tradition of the Boston Post cane. And I'm pleased to present this to Gladys Benner.
Gladys E. Benner of Fairfield, who has received the Boston Post cane, an honor given to the oldest citizen of a municipality. We extend our congratulations and best wishes, and be it ordered that this official expression of sentiment be sent forthwith on behalf of the 129th Legislature and the people of the state of Maine, and signed Troy Jackson, President of the Senate, Derek Grant, Secretary of the Senate, Sarah Gideon, Speaker of the House, Robert Hunt, Clerk of the House, and myself, Senator Scott Searway of Kennebec County, and Representative Rudnicki of Fairfield. So congratulations.
Thank you, Scott. Okay. So before I call the meeting to order, I just want to say thanks for everybody coming out tonight, as well as, and thank you, Nathaniel, for playing. That was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. At this time, I call this Fairfield Annual Town Budget Meeting to order. Please turn to page 62 of your annual town report. And we are going to vote on Article 1 to elect a moderator. So we will now act on Article 1 to choose a moderator. Do I have a motion to nominate a moderator?
I nominate Peter Mills.
Do I have a second? Second. Are there any other nominations? Do I have a motion to cease nominations? Second. Thank you. All those in favor of Peter Mills as moderator, please signify by raising your hand. All right. Mr. Moderator, if you would please come forward to be sworn in.
Certainly.
All right.
No,
If you'd raise your right hand. Do you swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States as long as you continue a citizen thereof, so help you God, and that you will faithfully discharge to the best of your abilities the duties incumbent on you as moderator according to the Constitution and laws of this state, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. If you would sign here, please.
Sure. There you go.
And I will take that.
Good, good.
And when you get to here, that's where you're going to do that piece when that passes. And I turn the gavel over to you, Mr. Moderator.
All right.
Thank you.
I think there's a certain distance back from this microphone that is the sweet spot. Is this okay without echoes? If you get up here, I think it goes crazy. All right. But we got to do it on, I'd like to talk just to people out front, but we got to use the mics for the sake of the people watching television. I hope they have something better to do tonight. All right, we're down to Article 3. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $888,907 for the salaries and operations of general government. We want to do 2 first.
Yeah, sorry. We need to.
There's a sequence here. The first one we're going to take up is Article 2 to see if the town will allow non-residents who have information pertaining to Article 2 through Article 37 to speak. Do I have a motion on this article? Yes, I do, in a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Good. We're down to Article 3. Article 2 carries. Does the town manager wish to speak briefly about this budget? All right, you come right ahead.
Let me interrupt you for just a minute.
not going to take long so that we can get through this pretty quickly. So good evening, everyone. As the town clerk had mentioned, your budgets are on page 62 of this, but I also want to draw your attention to pages 67, which is where all the spreadsheets start. Every article in this budget that uses to raise and appropriate money does have a spreadsheet that follows that. It is a line-by-line budget of every department. Just as a quick reminder, we don't line-by-line appropriate. We appropriate funds for the budget as a whole, but this lets you know exactly the information that the town council as well as the budget committee had while they reviewed budgets this winter while we were putting this together. One of the biggest influences in this budget, and I believe will probably be a large influence over the next several years, is that we have 5 retirements this year from 4 different departments. And as folks retire, usually what happens is that by the time folks get to retirement age, more often than not, their insurance benefits are all at the single level, which is what is happening to us in every single case this year. And in order for us to budget appropriately for starting July, we've had to budget coverage for benefits at the family level, which is there's a substantial difference. So that's going to be the biggest influence you're going to see in a lot of these budgets this year is going to be in their benefit lines. As folks are hired into those positions as we go forward next year, hopefully we'll have a better idea of exactly what these benefit pieces are going to look like. There are a few other budgets that are up, one being the police department, and we'll discuss all of these and feel free to ask all of your questions when we get to each one. Many members of our departments are here, as well as the town council and myself that can answer your questions. So please feel free to use the microphone and ask any questions you have about this budget. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Mills so that we can get started. Thank you for coming.
We are now down to Article 3 with, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $888,907 for salaries and operations of general government. And it's broken down as follows: $710,438 for administration, $136,008 for insurance, $10,000 for general assistance, $12,061 for elections, and $20,000 for legal services. Town council recommends the full figure of $888,907, with admin being $710,838, and the budget committee concurs. There's a note here explaining the context of this. Do I have a motion on Article 3? I do, in a second. Discussion on Article 3. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, are you in favor of Article 3? Raise your right hand. Any opposed? Article 3 carries. We're down to Article 4. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $235,911 for municipal debt. This is requested by the department and is recommended by the council and the budget committee. Do I have a motion on Article 4? I do. In a second, I do. Make sure I didn't skip anything. And any discussion or questions concerning Article 4? Seeing none, are you in favor of 4? Any opposed? Article 4 carries. Article 5, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $194,817 for salaries and operations of the Lawrence Public Library. Department requests it, and the town council and budget committee recommend it. Do I have a motion on Article 5? I do, in a second. Discussion, questions? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Article 5 carries. Article 6, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $33,014 for the operation and maintenance of the Fairfield Community Center. This is requested by the department in the amount of $33,014, and it's recommended by both the council and the budget committee. And do I have a motion on Article 6? And I do, in a second. Questions or comments concerning Article 6? I see none. All in favor, raise your hands. Any opposed? None. Article 6 carries. Article 7, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $1,210,983 for the salaries, operations of the police department. Now, this is requested by the department and recommended by the council and the budget committee. Do I have a motion on this article, Article 7 for the police department? I do, in a second. Questions or comments concerning the police department in Article 7? Yes? I'm sorry, there are two different numbers at least, and I misread one of them. $210,000 is what, $1,210,983 is what's in the warrant. The department requests it. The budget committee the department requests $209,983. Town council recommends the higher number that's in the warrant, but the budget committee recommends the lower number that the department requests. I'm sorry, I misread that. Now, do we have a motion on that article? On 7. Okay, we have a motion to recommend the town, to approve the town council recommendation, which is the budget, the warrant as written and not as recommended by the department or the budget committee. Now, is that motion seconded? It is seconded. Now, do we have questions or comments? I do, in the back, yes.
Hi, George Hofgren from Nice Corner Drive. And so it looks like it's a $170,000 increase for the police budget this year. Last year I didn't pay close attention, but I think that it was also a large, maybe one of the largest increases last year. And I'm starting to wonder, I don't know if this is relevant for right here, but I'm starting to wonder at a per capita basis compared to, say, Waterville or Benton, let's say, where we're going to fall in there. At some point, are we just, really spending a lot more per person for the police? And I'm sure those are numbers that are not available, but I do have a question, which is, I understand that Jeannie Dispatch is retiring, which if she's here, hi Jeannie, and you rock, yes. But I think that it was explained at one of the last council meeting that at least for now anyway, they were just going to kind of subsume the dispatch duties into the officers that are on at that time. I also see that a new officer, a full-time officer, is being brought in. But I'm not, in my mind, it doesn't seem to really add up to $170,000. So I'm just wondering, what those numbers are.
The question fundamentally is, what is the difference between, what accounts for the difference between the two figures that are in the warrant, basically? As recommended versus requested? Oh, you're talking about the increase? The increase over last year? Yes. So the question is, how do you account for the increase over last year?
The increase of losing a person.
Okay, that will be...
Well, the budget does include either replacing the current dispatcher or replacing the current dispatcher with a sworn police officer, so that it's actually a sworn police officer that's sitting behind the desk. And that is so that we have enough manpower in the summer and winter. If something occurs in town, they would be able to lock the door and leave and go out onto the road. So it would be making, like Gene's position, an actual police officer instead of a dispatcher. So like I said, if we have a major incident during the day, that person would be able to close the door and go on the emergency. They'll also fill in when there's nobody else working on the day shift. So if we don't have anybody available to work because of sick time, vacation time, things like that, we could utilize that position versus utilizing overtime. As far as the increase goes, it did go up $170,000 this year. As I said earlier, we have a couple of, retirements. One obviously is Gene, who's been there since, a lot of us in the room, I think, were born, since 1983. Not me, but some of it. But she's been there forever, and she really is the face of the police department. But we also have another officer that's retiring, and whenever we replace a police officer, it's extremely expensive. To get a person off the streets, sworn in, working the road, runs about $40,000 before they're, by the time they're out of the academy. So we invest that much money in them. So So this year's budget, on top of the insurance increases that we have, also includes the training of 2 new officers to replace the ones that are retiring. 98,000 of that is for one of our officers going to the main drug enforcement agency. He actually works for us. The state pays us back for that, and he just works solid drug cases. So we do have to budget that, but if you look in there, the state will be paying us back that amount. So that $98,000 is a wash. They'll pay us back for that.
What is the difference in, I don't remember what last year's increase was, so what would be the 2-year increase, I guess?
I don't have that right in front of me right now. Perhaps somebody has it. That's just not a question that I was prepared for.
Okay, so that's something I'll probably be bringing up at town council, is how this breaks out to on a per capita basis, just because Fairfield is really kind of a small community and then kind of like a spaced out community. And when I look at Waterville or I look at Skowhegan, you know, I see a lot more police presence necessary. So I'm just wondering at what point do we need to like either put the brakes on or figure out what the real need is of the town.
Well, I can tell you, since I've been the chief here, our complaint volume has gone from about 7,000, 8,000 to 17,000. So we have 2 utility officers that work 12 hours a day when they're not filling in vacations, comp times, and such. Those are the guys that you see out on the roads running the traffic, because that's what gives us the ability to answer the calls from the local public. When somebody wants enforcement done on this street, one of the utility officers usually takes care of that. We haven't had that available since February because we have open shifts. We have one officer that's reassigned to MDEA and other officers retiring and such.
So is that the patrol officers that are out running the streets and whatnot, is that a form of revenue for the police, like tickets and stuff like that? Does that come back to you?
Absolutely not. When we as taxpayers pay the officers, we pay for the fuel. The only thing we don't pay for are the ticket books, and all of the revenue goes to the state. So we receive no revenue whatsoever other than accident reports, parking tickets, and this drug enforcement officer.
Okay, while we have the chief at the mic, are there any other questions or comments from the members? I see none. Thank you. Yes, sir. Go ahead. You go right ahead. Yeah, his question's a simple one.
I can address that. So the $1,000 difference is a line that the council recommended adding in, which is ACO veterinary care. So we've had some changes in our animal control officer and the policies regarding that, but when the town comes into acquisition of an animal and the owner isn't known, our ACO budget gets hit with that, and we weren't separating that out, and it was causing some overages in the ACO budget. So in order to try and get a better handle of what that is costing and how we need to budget for it, we've recommended putting a $1,000 line item to cover care for wounded animals when we can't find their owners. So if that animal ends up getting adopted away through the Humane Society, we don't get to recover that money, so we need to budget for it.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor, raise your hands. The motion is for the higher number, $1,210,983. And any opposed? 1 opposed, 2 opposed, and the motion carries and Article 7 carries. We're down to Article 8. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $885,187 for the salaries and operations of the fire department, and this is the same number recommended by the department and by the council and by the budget committee. Do I have a motion on Article 8? I have one and a second. We have discussions or comments or questions concerning the fire department. Seeing none, are you in favor of Article 8? Any opposed? Article 8 carries. We're down to Article 9 to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $214,866 for the cost of operations and maintenance of fire departments and street lighting. The article is broken down as $75,000 for street lights, $139,866 for fire hydrants. The department, the town council, and the budget committee recommend the same number. I have a motion on this one, Article 9. I do, and a second. Any questions or comments concerning Article 9? See none. So all in favor? Any opposed? Article 9 carries. We're down to 10, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $1,203,262 for salaries and operations, public works and cemeteries and parks departments. The article is broken down as $1,113,804 for public works, $89,858 for cemeteries and parks, and it appears that the town council and the budget committee both recommend the department request. Do I have a motion on Article 10? I do, and a second. Am I doing it again? There's $100 between these two. Thank you for reading it. All right, so hold on a minute. Yes, the department is requesting $100 less than what the council recommends and the budget committee recommends. However, the motion was made to approve the higher number that's in the warrant. So that's the motion on the floor. Now, do you have questions or concerns about it? The question is, what's the $100 about? Yes, sir.
So when this budget was prepared by the department head, he was trying to be very frugal about the training budget. However, it came to our attention that there is an added mandatory training that we wanted to make sure was in the budget so that we didn't blow through that line and then come back and say, oh, well, we overspent. So we added that back in to reflect that there is going to be an additional training cost for public works this year.
Any other questions or concerns? All in favor of Article 10? Any opposed? Article 10 carries. We're down to Article 11. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $270,000 for road, street, sidewalk paving, and to carry forward any unexpended account balance to the next fiscal year. Here we have the department requesting that number and the town council and the budget committee recommending it. Do I have a motion on Article 11? We do, in a second. Questions or concerns about 11? Seeing none, do you favor Article 11? Any opposed to 11? It carries. We're down to Article 12, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $18,150 for solid waste disposal. This is the department's request, and the council and the budget committee both recommend it. Do I have a motion on Article 12? And I do, and a second. Questions, concerns? Seeing none, do you favor Article 12? Raise your hands. Any opposed? It carries. We're down to 13, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $20,000 for spring cleanup. Department requests $20,000. Town council recommends that number, but the budget committee recommends $0. Do I have a motion? Yes, in what amount? All right, we have a motion for $20,000, and I heard a second. And questions concerning this one? Come to the mic so that it's for the benefit of our vast TV audience.
Well, I don't know if I'm this is George Hoffman from Nice Corner, and I don't know if I'm echoing
Stand back about another 6 inches.
Thanks, Peter. And other people's sentiments, or possibly the council's sentiments. But when I moved to this town, the cleanup was not only on a much larger scale for each household, but kind of necessary. There was just a lot of stuff, a lot of buildings that were being cleaned out, I think, if that's what I recall. And now it seems like people are kind of putting out, like some token stuff that they have, which is great. I mean, it's a nice gesture. I guess if we do it as like a community thing, it's worth doing. But I'm not sure it's really necessary. So if the council feels that this is being done kind of out of a legacy thing and doesn't need to be done and can save $20,000, maybe I think that might be the right way to go. But I would like to see, I know myself, I could stand putting out a lot more than, a few items and stuff like that. I haven't done that, but So it would be nice for the service to be available. For some people that really do have like some barns or stuff to clean out that they inherited, it'd be nice if that was available. But as it is, it just seems like it's getting smaller and smaller. And I don't know if this is just my observation, but at some point maybe it just has become unnecessary. And I don't know how it factors in that CMD is no longer locally owned either. So that's another thing. If they don't profit off of that, maybe it's not necessary.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Frank Bouchard. I live in Fairfield, 69 High Street. I've noticed I put my 10 items out, and people would come by, and they would pick up, and I'd pick another 5 items out, and they'd come by, and they'd pick those up too. So I think we're not just losing 10 items. I'm very glad that this is happening, because I think it could possibly end up in our woods and some dirt road and all that good stuff. So I'm glad it's being done.
Any other, yes, we have.
Bill Boyce. All you have to do is drive around town right now, and you'll see an awful lot of bulk stuff that many people have no way of getting rid of. So this is a very valuable service, and I think it's saving us money in the long run. Just think what it would cost the ordinary citizen who doesn't have the means to rent a truck or borrow a trailer to get rid of 7 old mattresses. I've seen them piled out there. I'd love to be back in the mattress business, by the way.
All right, other,
Mr. Moderator.
yes, sir.
So I did just want to address a couple of things on this point. Personally, I'm very much in favor of the town cleanup day, but I do want to just make sure there's no ill will towards the budget committee. In our budget discussions, I had suggested that we set up this dichotomy in the recommendations so that we could have a discussion about this program, because it does have costs beyond the $20,000 in the budget. There are also labor costs, potential workers' comp costs for injuries, and I just wanted to make sure that it seems like it's a very popular program, but that we continue to discuss it, because just because something is popular doesn't necessarily mean that everyone has all the information about it. In reality, this probably costs closer to $50,000 when you take all of the costs that are sort of melded into the rest of this budget through labor and benefits and workers' comp. And I just wanted to make sure that people were aware of that and that we had a discussion about it. If it remains popular and that people want to continue doing it, I don't think anybody is really against doing that. So I just wanted to say that the Budget Committee wasn't trying to be mean. They acquiesced in my attempt to make sure that we had a debate so that people could get all the information, and I want to thank them for doing that.
It's just for the benefit of people who are watching or whatnot, but if you have more than what needs to be placed out, you can bring your things right down to CMD throughout the week, and I think on Saturday, and I'm not sure there's really a limit for what you can bring down, so the opportunity to get rid of stuff is right there. And I'm sure that all towns in Maine have people with a plethora of furniture and stuff like that. Fairfield seems to have their own thing. I'm not sure whether or not it's something that at a $50,000 cost, and the whole, not just the cost, but the whole workload, everyone building up for it. Again, if it's a cultural thing, we're doing it to help ourselves, fantastic. But I don't see the volume of stuff being put out that was once put out. I'm not sure the need is really there. That's maybe I don't.
Right. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
That you can take stuff down to CMD. However, there is a cost for that, and there are a lot of people that are elderly or disabled, and they don't have the means to take the things down there in the first place, and that's why we have the spring cleanup. As a matter of fact, I had an elderly neighbor that needed something taken out of her house a couple days ago, and I went down and dragged it out and took it out to the road because she's 85 years old and she had no one else to do that for her. So I did that. So it is a valuable service, and I think that it should remain that way. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not ashamed to say that. I saw a couple of things on the road, and I stopped and picked them up and brought them home, and I'm going to refurbish them. So to me, I think it's a great thing. If I see a flower pot that somebody doesn't want, I'm gonna bring it home and I'm gonna plant something in it and put it in my garden. And I'm gonna paint on it because I'm an artist. So to me, it's valuable. To me, I think it's a great service and I think it should remain, so that's the way it is.
Did I see a hand over here at all? Tom or anybody? Okay,
Thank you, by the way.
thank you. All right, yes, sir. You're voting already. We're going to see how popular this is. All in favor of Article 13? All opposed? Several opposed? And it carries. We're down to 14, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $14,400 for recycling. The department and the town council recommend $14,400. The budget committee recommends 0. Do I have a motion in some amount on Article 14? 14,400. We have a motion for 14,400. Do I have a second? We do. And now, do we have questions or comments concerning recycling? Oh, yes, I'm sorry. God, eyes on the side of my head. Yell at me.
This was another article where we, in the budget process, discussed sort of having very different recommendations so that we could have a frank discussion about recycling. Recycling is very good, and I am very pro-recycling, but due to market forces well beyond the control of any municipality or even our state, there is a real likelihood that a lot of recycling is simply not actually getting recycled anymore. The global market for recyclable material has changed dramatically in the last couple of years. We have no way of knowing what actually happens to recycled goods when we put them in these bins. And it's not to say that they don't get recycled, but we have no way of saying that they do either. And I wanted to make sure that this was something that was highlighted, that I think we should be in the habit of doing this. I think it's an important skill for all of us to be in the habit of recycling things. But ultimately, if we want to make sure we are making the biggest impact we can in favor of the environment, we need to reduce the amount of stuff that we're using, because recycling is not a solution that takes care of the problem in the long run, and it probably won't for the next 10 years or so.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor of Article 14? Any opposed? Unopposed? It carries. We're down to Article 15, a special appropriation to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $195,000 for the capital improvement equipment and other reserve accounts, broken down as follows. $125,000 for capital equipment reserve, $40,000 for capital improvement reserve, $5,000 for computer reserve, $5,000 for playground reserve, and $20,000 for revaluation reserve. The total comes to $195,000, recommended by the department, recommended by the council, and recommended by the budget committee. I have a motion on this one. We do. Article 15 is moved and seconded. Do we have questions or comments concerning it? We do.
Shelley Rudnicki, Fairfield Center. Just a quick question. Can somebody just tell us, and because it may be in the backs, but how much are actually in the reserve accounts currently?
For all of them? Go ahead.
So for the capital equipment reserve, that 125 is actually split amongst Public Works and the police department. So currently, as of May 8th, the police department has $57,832. Public Works Department has $263,614. For the capital improvement reserve, that's for buildings, all of our buildings. That currently has $145,979.98. For the computer reserve account, we have $19,087. That's for computers amongst all of our departments. For the playground reserve, it has $22,114. And the reevaluation reserve, $170,715.17.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Are you in favor of Article 15? Raise your hand. Any opposed? Article 15 carries. We're on to Article 16 to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $7,000 for community events as recommended by the town council and the budget committee. Do I have a motion? I do, and a second. Questions or comments concerning Article 16? I do have one, yes.
Kim Linloff, I live on Connor Ave. I'm just wondering why we don't get sponsors for these public events instead of using taxpayer dollars to fund them. That's what every other organization that puts on events has to do.
Anyone care to answer? Yes, sir.
So I know in the past when we tried to do Fairfield days on a more regular basis, there were significant difficulties in getting consistent sponsorships, and the same has happened to things like the Chocolate Festival and things that private sponsorships just haven't come through, and we're hoping that we will be able to have a substantial recognition of the town's 250th anniversary, and that's really what we're saving up for. It's a unique event and it's of particular concern to our civic pride, and so we're shoring up so that we can be a good partner to private sponsors, but not leave it entirely into their hands whether or not we have civic events. So that's one event, right? It's one event that we're hoping will be quite big and in the future, so it's saving up for that event.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor of Article 16? Any opposed? Several opposed, but the article does carry. Article 17, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $1,500 to honor soldiers and sailors with graveside flags on Memorial Day, as recommended by the town council and by the budget committee. Do I have a motion? I do, and a second. Comments or questions? See none. All in favor of Article 17? Any opposed? It carries. We're down to 18 to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $35,582 to support the Fairfield Police Athletic League, as recommended by the council and the budget committee. A motion. I have a motion and a second. A second. We have it. And any questions or comments? On the next page, you. You want me to take several at once? I can do that. All right. All right, we're down to we're at the Memorial Day flags. Are we all set on that? If you're in favor, raise your hands. We did it already? No, we're down to the PAL. My apologies. We're on Article 18. If you're in favor of 18, raise your hands. Any opposed? 18 carries, and we're now down to 19 to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $500 to pay youth membership fees at the Alphon Youth Center for Fairfield Children, as recommended by the council and the budget committee. Do I have a motion? And seconded. Discussion or questions? All in favor of 19? Any opposed? It carries. We're up to 20. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $3,000 to support the Fairfield Historical Society, as recommended by the council and budget committee. Motion, yes. Seconded? It is. Questions or concerns? Seeing none, are you in favor of 20? Any opposed? It carries. 21, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $2,500 to support child and family services provided by the Kennebec Valley Community Action Program as recommended by the Council and Budget Committee. Moved, seconded. Questions or concerns? See none. All in favor of 21? Any opposed to 21? None. It carries. We're 22. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $3,000 to support transportation programs provided by Kennebec Valley Community Action Program. Now, here the town council recommends $2,500, but the budget committee recommends $3,000. Do I have a motion in some amount? I have a motion for $3,000. Is that motion seconded? It is seconded. Questions? Comments? All in favor of the article at $3,000? Any opposed? And it carries. We're down to 23 to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $8,500 to support the Fairfield Interfaith Food Pantry as recommended by the council and by the budget committee. It's moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, are you in favor of 23? Any opposed? And it carries. We're down to 24 to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $3,000 to support the Mid-Maine Homeless Shelter. The council recommends $1,500 and the budget committee recommends $3,000. Do I have a motion in some amount? I have a motion in the amount of $3,000, which I recognize first. And that is seconded? It is seconded. Questions concerning Article 24? Questions or comments? Yes, sir.
Hi there, Matthew Bard. I have a concern on this one, and I've raised this concern before. The Mid-Maine Homeless Shelter, it's a great organization. On an emergency basis, we have very, very little luck getting people placed there. And I think we actually fund them with more than what they serve the community at. On the inverse, the Trinity Shelter in Skowhegan has never turned us away to bring somebody up there. So we really need to think about how we're funding these, or maybe the possibility of funding the Trinity Shelter as well, or in place of.
All right. All right. Yes, sir.
Following up on that, when we considered this budget from the council's point of view, we actually we had a lengthy discussion with a representative from the homeless shelter, and essentially, personally, I would not feel at all bad about giving them the extra money that the budget committee is recommending. However, I do want to point out that in that conversation, I was very clear in asking their representative, if we give you more money, will we be able to cite more Fairfield residents in need of housing into your shelter? And they said they could not guarantee that we were not likely to receive a greater level of service for giving them more money. My point of view is this is your money. It's not mine to give away because I feel good giving it away to the homeless shelter, even though I might personally want to give my own money away to the homeless shelter to help them. In terms of dollars for service, giving them $3,000 extra does not buy the town any additional services. That said, if it is, our collective will as a community that we want to support their work, that is also entirely up to you. I would like to look into the Trinity Shelter if they're supporting us. I do know that some religiously affiliated shelters don't take public money as part of their programs. So I would be interested to know if that is their situation, or if there's some way that we might be able to look at supporting them in the future if they are providing that service to us as well.
We have a question. We have a hand in the air from a non-voter. Is it the pleasure of the group that he be allowed to speak? Yes, sir. Step up.
It seems very strange for me to sit back there. I've been sitting here for 34 years. I had to move to Nashua because I've got a young grandson down there. However, I've been with the Mid-Maine Homeless Shelter since the beginning. By law, we cannot take somebody if the shelter is full. That's just a fact. Somebody here has the facts. I don't have all of them right now, but I know that there were at least 28 people last year whose last zip code residence was Fairfield. I know that for a fact. We also supply a lot of food on a regular basis, on a weekly basis. We get people employed at a higher rate than any other shelter in New England, period. This is a great service for this area. We have to follow state law. We can't take, if the shelter's full, the shelter's full. We can't do anything. That will tell you, you know, how much and how great the need is in this area. Believe me, we have been run fiscally very responsibly over the years, and I think that the service that we give Fairfield and the whole Central Maine area is exceptional. I really hope that you can see your way to give us the 3,000. By the way, even though I have moved, I am still on that board. This area is still my home.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Maura Bensel, Colville Road. I was the representative because I also volunteer and I'm also on the board at the shelter. And due to the question about if Fairfield gave us this additional $1,500, would they be able to have priority? By law, well, by the federal and state statutes for the money we receive, we cannot prioritize anywhere. And so I just want to make that point. The other thing is, a lot of times if someone just calls and says, do you have a bed available? A lot of times, as Doug just mentioned, we are totally full. But if we don't get that person's name, we will work with them. We also have mats. A lot of times we're well beyond our 48 bed capacity. We have people on mats. The thing though too, we're talking about not just the shelter, that we have so many services that are provided for people, not only while they're in the shelter, but also for a year beyond. We have a very, very high percentage of people who are guests at the shelter will then leave our shelter within 60 days and they will have a housing option. Many of them will live here in Fairfield and eventually move out sometimes, and then on their own will be doing that. I think the money that we're requesting will also cover the emergency food bank, where we do have residents from Fairfield coming every week. And the thing is, when Doug mentioned that we had 28 people who stayed at the shelter in 2018, that total cost was estimated to be about $60,000 to cover for the amount of stay before they moved on to a different housing option. Less than 20% of that is covered either by Maine Care or not. The rest is absorbed by the shelter with the type of funding that we get. And so the $1,500 that we're asking for isn't even going to cover the cost for us to house people who are here from Fairfield. So I do ask that people consider that additional amount for the shelter. Thank you.
Go ahead.
So as the Town of Fairfield's welfare director, excuse me, I have shared Sergeant Bard's frustrations in not being able to place somebody in emergency shelter, a client in need of a place to go. And I do understand his concerns. And since that got taken up a few years back, the shelter and I were able to meet, and we were able to collaborate with other services. And while they still don't take them any more or less than they used to, the collaborative agencies that they arrange for our clients and the help that they give our clients is actually a very good value to the town. So one of our most challenging placements is people with mental health issues, and coordinating them with agencies that are equipped to service a person that's in a situation of homelessness and still dealing with mental health issues. And they will arrange a place for other agencies to meet those clients, even if the client can't stay at the facility. And that has become a great value to my office, as well as supporting people in crisis from Fairfield.
Okay, other questions or comments? Seeing none, are you in favor of Article 24 at $3,000? Any opposed? Several, but it carries. We're down to 25, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $1,500 to support the Hospice of Waterville as recommended by the council and the Budget Committee. I have a motion on this one, and a second. Comments, questions? Are you in favor of Article 25? Any opposed? It carries. We're at 26, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $4,750 to support Spectrum Generations as recommended by the council and the Budget Committee. I have a motion and a second. Questions, concerns? All in favor? Any opposed? 26 carries. We're at 27, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $500 to support senior citizen programs at the Fairfield Center Grange as recommended by the council and the Budget Committee. Do I have a motion? I do, in a second. Questions, concerns? Yes, sir. It may have to be next year, because I think we're limited by the amount that's in the warrant. I think town manager agrees with me, so I'm sorry.
This is the full amount that was requested at our budget meeting by the Grange. So this is the full request.
All right. So, any other questions, concerns? All in favor of Article 27? Any opposed? It carries. 28, to see if the town will vote to appropriate the full balance of snowmobile registration fees reimbursed to the town of Fairfield by the state of Maine to the Fairfield County Riders Snowmobile Club for the maintenance of the network of snowmobile trails within the town of Fairfield, on condition that those trails be kept open to the public for outdoor winter recreation purposes at no charge. This is recommended by the council and the Budget Committee. Do I have a motion? Do, and a second. Questions, concerns? All in favor of Article 28? Any opposed? It carries. 29, to see if the town will vote to appropriate $28,698 to support local business and economic development organizations as listed below. 0 to the Somerset Economic Development Corp., $625 to Mid-Maine Chamber of Commerce, $8,616 to Kennebec Valley Council of Government, and $19,357 to Central Maine Growth Council, totaling the amount of $28,598. And this is recommended by the council and by the Budget Committee. Oh, no, it isn't. Budget Committee recommends adding $100 in for SEDC. That's the difference. There, I got one right. I want a motion in some amount. With the idea that the $100 extra would go to the SEDC. All right, and we have that seconded. Now, do we have questions or comments on that motion? All in favor of the motion as made? Any opposed? It passes. Article 30, to see if the town will vote to accept and expend the sum of $1,772,809 from estimated revenues to reduce the amount to be raised by taxation as recommended by the council and by the Budget Committee. No, it is not. There are two different numbers. Three different numbers. Now you're challenged. No, it comes down to 2. All right, the town council recommends $1,772,709, and the Budget Committee recommends the amount that's in the warrant, which is in the article, $1,772,809. Do I have a motion in some amount? All right, I have a motion for the larger figure, and that's seconded? Yes. Now do we have discussions or questions? Why is the $100 difference?
So the article that you just passed, we're where you put the additional $100 in for SEDC, you need to put the additional $100 in for the TIF revenue line. So council's recommendation for the TIF revenue was $100 less. That's all.
All right. Are you in, any other questions or concerns? Are you in favor of the motion as made, which is $1,772,809? Any opposed? It carries in that amount. Article 31, to see if the town will vote to accept and expend the categories of funds listed below as provided by the Maine legislature. Estimated revenues as follows: municipal revenue sharing at $425,000, local road assistance at $73,000, homestead reimbursement at $400,000, snowmobile registration refund $2,000, general assistance reimbursement $5,000, veterans exemption reimbursement $6,000, tree growth reimbursement $30,000, and any other local, state, or federal funds or grants unknown, and civil emergency funds, which are unknown. And it's noted here that actual amounts received may be more or less than stated above. Town council and budget recommend approval of these, of this article as read. Do I have a motion on Article 31? I do, and a second? I do, and a question, or any questions or concerns about Article 31? All in favor of 31? Any opposed? It carries. We're down to 32, to see if the town will vote to authorize the town council to apply up to the sum of $400,000 from the undesignated fund balance to reduce the amount to be raised by taxation as recommended by the council and the budget committee. Do I have a motion on Article 32? I do. A second? Yes. Any questions or concerns about Article 32? Yes.
So this is an article that we have some version of every year, and this year I'm pleased to say that we actually have a healthy enough fund balance to consider potentially using a substantial amount to offset taxation. However, we have to be very careful in considering this, that we do have to keep a healthy fund balance going forward. If we do this year to keep taxes, flat or low, that means that we can't do it again next year. Once we spend it back down to the line, it's just not there anymore. This is something of an accounting trick in that sense. I want to caution that other municipalities that have relied too heavily on spending down their fund balance have found themselves unable to bond favorably, unable to attract investment, unable to get favorable audit reports. I also want to point out that this is an authorization to apply up to this amount. At some point, the council has to decide how much to actually apply, and that's going to have a lot to do not only with this budget, but also with what the tax implications of the school budget are going to be as well, because we can't know how much we need to use to stabilize our tax rates until we know what they will actually be. So I want to encourage everyone to be very active in the school budgeting process. But we can't spend $400,000 every year out of the undesignated fund for the foreseeable future. So we do need to consider that going forward as to whether we want to keep taxes low by spending from the undesignated fund until we can't anymore, or allow taxes to rise at a more moderate pace that we can potentially keep up with in budget for, so we don't in 5 or 10 years have a tax crisis like has happened to other municipalities.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Yes, sir.
You're gonna have to come to the mic if you want
If it's
to
a
hear
quick question, I can repeat it.
So, I mean, I think that this is a great conversation, and I think we seem to have it every year, but and this year, I guess, is a more prosperous year, so it's one where we can kind of like maybe kick the football or whatever. But I wonder, I just have some basic questions, and I'm sorry if this is not the place, if a regular council meeting is a place, but this pool of money, is this, how, does it grow on its own? Is there some dividend is invested or something like that?
So, do you want to answer how it grows?
How does it grow?
How does it grow?
That's fine.
That's a great question. So the undesignated fund balance is money that's not committed to anything. So funds that were in the capital reserve accounts that you had approved earlier, those funds are invested. They're invested in various different funds with a interest rate for return, which is why you'll also see in the revenue line there's an interest income. These funds are funds that are not designated towards anything, hence undesignated. And so what every auditor recommends to a municipality is you have at least 3 months worth of operating costs on hand in your savings account, per se. It's really what it is, it's just a savings account. And so that number is listed in these spreadsheets for you. It grows by things like, we expect to bring in $900,000 in excise tax, but we bring in $950,000. So when we put the budget together this year, there's budget estimates, but you'll see as revenues come in, sometimes they're higher than what we estimated. That's how it grows. So when you put those, also the other piece is that if we estimate revenues, so years ago, we estimated some state revenue sharing money, and it didn't come in as high as estimate. So that also decreases what's in your undesignated fund balance. So it goes up and it goes down. Right now, we've been really lucky, whereas we've had steady growth in the community. We've been really cautious when it comes to budgeting revenues. Departments are really good with their budgets, so we're not having a lot of major overruns. We're planning better with our capital reserve accounts, so we're not having to draw on the undesignated fund balance to fund plow trucks and police cruisers. We're planning better. So that's how that works.
That all makes great sense. Thank you very much. What I'm wondering is if there is some threshold, or if this is just not done, depending on what the auditor might suggest or your accountant, where a refund is, a certain refund is just issued to the taxpayers. Because assuming that it isn't really a paper amount, this actually does come from the taxes originally, right? Yes.
It does come from, well, not just property taxes.
And
no.
the state share.
And,
yes.
and motor vehicle registrations and agent
So
fees and
townspeople,
interest and
okay.
everything.
I see that. Okay. That complicates repayment. I understand.
I think in a more sort of theoretical sense, the refund is when we use this to offset the taxation the next year, and we spend it back down to the 3 months on hand. The issue is simply that this year, we may be able to, use up to $400,000 in that sense, but we don't know what's going to happen between now and July 1st. If we had a major expense that was unable to be covered by capital improvements and we have to come back for a special town meeting, that's also where that money comes from. So it's not a guarantee that it's going to be there every year that we can keep doing this. So when it is there and we can use it to offset taxation, that's great, but it's not just a slush fund for the purpose of offsetting taxation.
Okay. Good enough.
Yes, ma'am.
It might also explain at $400,000 for this year anyway, if that's at all indicative. It might explain why
I'm going to
maybe
recognize Representative Lucchini at this
isn't
point.
that much participation because people don't need to.
Representative Lucchini, you have the floor.
Hi, so I do have a question about this, and it's just maybe my not understanding it and trying to follow along here. But your comment, so it says the undesignated fund balance is expected to be the $3,600,000, right? That's, huh?
It is. As of 6/30/2018.
Okay. If our total budget is a little over $5 million, $3 million is almost half of the total budget. If we need 3 months of the $5 million, we're a little over $1.5 million. So where am I? I'm just kind of like questioning that.
You have to pay for the school and the county out of that too. We have to have 3 months on hand for those operations.
Okay, that's kind of what I was asking. That's what I was trying to figure out where that was. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns? Are you in favor of Article 32? Any opposed? A couple opposed. However, it carries. We're down to 33 to see if the town will vote to apply as much of the yearly overlay as may be necessary to fund property tax abatements and applicable interest granted during the July 1, 2019 through June 30, 2020 fiscal year as recommended by the council. Do I have a motion on 33? I have a second and a motion. Questions, concerns about Article 33? Yes, sir.
So just to the gentleman's point earlier, in a sense, this is also part of how the undesignated fund would ultimately grow, is that we budget to collect a little bit more than our expected expenses. That way, if we get a hit for something that we're not necessarily expecting when we make this budget, there's a little bit of cushion, and if we don't use it, it goes back into the undesignated fund.
Okay, any other questions or concerns about 33? All in favor? Any opposed? It carries. We're down to 34 to see if the town will vote to fix a date when taxes shall be due and payable, and to fix a rate of interest to be charged on taxes remaining unpaid after said date. Council recommends the taxes shall be due and payable when billed, and that an annual interest rate of 9% per annum be charged on taxes remaining unpaid after the 7th day of August 2019, or 30 days from date the tax bill is mailed, whichever is later, for the first installment, after the 13th day of November 2019 for the second installment, after the 5th day of February 2020 for the third installment, and after the 6th day of May 2020 for the fourth installment. Do I have a motion on Article 34? Do, and seconded. Questions or comments concerning 34? See none. All in favor? Any opposed? It carries. We're down to Article 35 to see if the town will vote to fix the interest rate to be paid by the town on abated taxes pursuant to Title 36 MRSA 506-A at 5%. as recommended by the town council. Do I have a motion on 35? Seconded? It is. Questions or concerns about 35? I see none. All in favor? Any opposed? 35 carries. We're down to 36 to see if the town will vote to authorize the tax collector to accept prepayment of taxes not yet committed and to pay no interest on said prepayments, all as recommended by the town council. Do I have a motion? And a second. Questions, concerns about 36? I see none. All in favor of 36? Any opposed? It carries. We're down to 37. See if the town will vote to authorize the town council on behalf of the town to sell and dispose of any real estate acquired by the town for the non-payment of taxes or by any other means, and to execute quitclaim deeds for such property that is sold. The town council recommends Article 37. Do I have a motion? A second? I do. Questions or concerns about this one? All in favor of 37? Any opposed? It carries. You want me to read this announcement? Yeah. We're all set. Are we done? I think we are. We have a motion to adjourn. Seconded. All in favor of adjournment? Any opposed? Adjournment carries.